How are we doing, guys? And welcome back to Ferrari Nation TV. Glorious, absolutely glorious day to be a Ferrari and McLaren fan. Ferrari and McLaren fan, of course. We lock out the top four positions. Ferrari are victorious once again. Amazing. Ferrari 1-2. I can't say I saw it coming, but it's happened. It's happened, guys. 4 points off in the Constructors, 4 points off Max in the Drivers' Championship. Am I getting too carried away? Yes, I definitely am by quoting that. But guys, what a result it was for Ferrari. I just didn't see it coming, Locks. I didn't see it coming at all, mate. How are you, fella?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, it was obviously me and you are both football fans, and we didn't have our two teams playing this weekend. But we did obviously have the Formula One, of course, to get stuck into. Although it was kind of unfavorable times, it kind of completely wrote off my Sunday, getting up at 4 a.m. for that. But yeah, it was a good weekend, mate. Like you said, good results, and yeah, we'll talk about it.
Well, I was watching it in Dublin, mate, and I was already quite, what do we say, joyful before that, if you get my drift, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, right, I'll watch the race. Max will win by 30 seconds. And I'll get some sleep after that. And that wasn't quite what happened afterwards, because it was a Ferrari 1-2, and it's like, right, let's stay out in Dublin then for a few more hours. And then it got to like 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was like, yeah, that's not quite ideal. But anyway, guys, I digress, because Carlos Sainz, what a performance yet again from Carlos. Does he have, Locks, the choice of whatever seat he wants outside of Ferrari for next season? Would we be able to go that far? In terms of his form this season, I genuinely think only Max has been better than Carlos so far this season. It was an absolute monster class from Carlos Sainz all weekend, really, not just in this race. It was absolutely phenomenal performance from Carlos Sainz. What's your thoughts there, mate?
I feel like we said after the Saudi GP, mate, that like after the Bahrain Grand Prix, mate, that he's gonna have a bee in his bonnet in a way. He's gonna have, I don't want to say so much prove, because we all know he's a great driver, but in terms of obviously being let go now in favor of Hamilton, and I think maybe bar Leclerc and Verstappen, anyone on the grid would probably get replaced by Lewis Hamilton if Hamilton was available, so maybe Norris, I would say that, but so it's, he has got something to prove in that sense. I don't know, mate, in terms of a seat, if one does come available for next year, if it's not a top team, does he take a year out and see what happens? Maybe, because it would be completely criminal if he was at a lower team, a back marker. He won't go to a back marker, but even kind of midfield, towards the midfield and lower, I think it would be unjust, mate. I think he deserves better than that. So I'm sure he's keeping an eye on what's happening with Verstappen, because if he does leave Red Bull, it's gone a little bit quiet, I know, recently, but if he does leave Red Bull,
probably because Mercedes are absolutely awful. I'll just throw that in there. Any kind of Mercedes slander, we take an opportunity to throw in this channel.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm actually not too bad on Mercedes. Locks, he's keen on the Mercedes slander. You'll get to know this in the channel, guys.
Yeah, man, I think it's just like, obviously I know you're a Leeds United fan, so you hate Man United anyway, but it's like me, like I hate Man United just because of how successful they were for so many years, and it's like you want to see a change of the guard, and obviously we've got that now. But yeah, I just think maybe a Red Bull, maybe Mercedes, maybe he goes to one of them teams. You're assuming that Lando's locked in at McLaren with Oscar Piastri, so there won't be a seat there. So Mercedes and Red Bull look like the two most likely, mate, at the minute. And I just feel like Red Bull's probably the more likely, because I think Mercedes are probably set on either Max Verstappen or Antonelli. I can't see Sainz going there over Antonelli because of how, Toto's pretty much said in the past that Antonelli is going to be the next big thing at Mercedes. So it's going to be interesting to see, mate, if a top team doesn't take a punt on him next season, he might take a year out. It wouldn't surprise me, mate, because could you see him go into a Williams or a Haas? You can't see that. You can't see it.
No, I don't think it will come to that. I do think a Mercedes or Red Bull seat will come to fruition. To be honest, I think
Aston maybe.
Well, I was going to say Aston, because if it's Lance Stroll, if the Strolls do decide that Lance needs to either race in a different discipline or isn't getting the enjoyment out of it, or even if Alonso moves on from Aston Martin, which is, it feels like to me, Alonso will go one way, Sainz will go the other. I don't see a world where Sainz hasn't got an option at Red Bull, Mercedes, or Aston Martin this season. I don't even think Sainz's camp looks that nervous about it. To be honest with you, considering when you hear what Carlos Sainz Senior says, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of panic there. Obviously, we know Carlos Sainz Senior met with Christian Horner and Helmut Marko quite publicly on the first race of the season, and Adrian Newey as well, in terms of in Bahrain before a wheel had even been turned. So this is before Carlos Sainz's magical start to the season. So there's definitely, there's no smoke without fire. There has to be interest there, surely.
And he was at Toro Rosso, right? Sainz.
Yeah, Max and Carlos actually, came through at the same time in the same team, and they shared the last 22 race wins, I think. I mean, Max has got 21 race wins have been between Max and Carlos in that Toro Rosso 2015 days. 19 for Max, 2 for Carlos. But, who's counting? Let's not get into technicalities. Listen, it will be an option for one of those three teams. I cannot see a world where that won't happen. I mean, Williams and Haas, et cetera, Zauber as well, they're probably going to make some changes. That feels to me more like Checo's probably territory at this moment in time. I just don't see a world where Sainz ends up there. And listen, his form is one thing. If he maintains this throughout the season, not even so much beating Charles, because I don't think he'll beat Charles over the season. I still think Charles is the better of the two. But I think over the season, Charles will get more points. But all Sainz really needs to do is make sure he's within a few tenths in quali pace, race pace, and he's getting the maximum points. He's basically doing what Charles did yesterday in terms of getting the maximum points possible. Left remaining. That's what both have done in the 3 races. Ollie Behrman as well, of course, in Saudi. Got the maximum realistic out the car in terms of getting 7th place. So that is what Ferrari and Carlos Sainz needs to do this season. It's why even after Bahrain, I wasn't nervous about the Sainz and Leclerc dynamic. If you saw it yesterday, they love each other. They genuinely do love each other, kind of thing. And I think there will be close friends even after Ferrari, and that look much like how Carlos and Lando are. There's genuinely a friendship there as well. So I do think both will work together to just try and. Ferrari are not Charles or Carlos are not going to win the Drivers' Championship this season. That's a totally unrealistic thing. But I did say after Bahrain, the constructors is doable because those two work together and they will maximise the results. It's what they've done so far this season, and they found themselves only 4 points behind. Albeit
Checo's a liability, but as well,
he is.
Checo's a liability.
When there's not a massive advantage, Checo has been found out. There's no other way around it. And yesterday, it wasn't just there was no advantage in terms of pace. Red Bull were arguably second up. Well, obviously, have to go through the data in a bit more detail, but at the very most, they were second fastest yesterday, probably closer to third fastest when you factor things in. So, Checo finished 20 seconds behind McLaren. That alone, never mind, in terms of the Ferraris, he was 20 seconds behind the McLarens. His quali pace is still pretty shocking, if we're being honest. I'd even use the word shocking. It has been a bit better this season, but he's still qualifying 5th, 6th, 7th on the grid. He's nowhere near the front row, and that's quite shocking in a car that has been this good and was still good in qualifying pace. By the way, on Saturday, they just had issues with the degradation and other things. Red Bull over a longer stint, but there is no question Carlos and Charles works better as a dynamic than Max and Checo. There's too much of a weighting towards Max in terms of who scores the points and who delivers. If Charles has an off day, Sainz will step up, and then the other way around. They will get decent points every weekend, unless the car drops off or there's reliability problems. That is my general feeling on it. But it's an interesting one. But let's just move on a little bit, because obviously it's a weird one to be discussing this. But obviously we know Lewis Hamilton will be driving for the Scuderia in 2025. It's an interesting debate, and I think I'm not going to go crazy takes and all this lot. I still think that is a fantastic move for Ferrari in terms of getting Ferrari to the next level. But there is the debate to be had there, in terms of the dynamic. It's not so much I'll let you jump in a second, mate. But it's not so much. I think Carlos is now better than Lewis Hamilton. I don't think that's the case. But I think the dynamic between Charles and Carlos is perfect, not only for this season, but building on to being a team that is right at the front and can compete every single race with Red Bull. It just feels to me like Charles and Lewis having two number one drivers all of a sudden. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it as much now. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
Nothing against Lewis. Just for that reason, it just makes me think, I don't know. Because yesterday, I said it to you before in terms of when Charles and Carlos go wheel to wheel, they do it at the right times. Yesterday, Ferrari called it off straight away. When Charles was getting within DRS, no, do not do it. Do not start going wheel to wheel. I think he even said to you when we were watching the race over WhatsApp, I bet Charles goes for it. And he didn't. I just think Charles and Lewis next season, can you do things like that? Are they going to end up going wheel to wheel? And if they do they end up giving Lando the win kind of thing? Things, just little things and pieces like that make me think, is it as good as what I thought at first? I never thought Ferrari would be this good at the start of the season. I never saw a world where they'd be making the start to the season that they have.
Yeah, I look, you mentioned about my Mercedes slander, mate.
Yeah, Lewis slander. The Lewis slander's coming.
I just fear. Do you not think maybe? I don't know if it, because obviously Lewis has had a couple bad years in a row now, and mostly down to the car, obviously. But I mean, this season he has struggled more than Russell. I think that's clear. I just feel like maybe Lewis Hamilton has lost a bit of love and passion for getting in that car every week and racing, mate. Personally, you might disagree. People might disagree with me and think I'm being a bit rash, but it's weird, mate. It was kind of like Abu Dhabi, was it? I always get this mixed up. 2021, Abu Dhabi 2021. Yeah. It just feels like a turning point. And I know it. Again, I know it's down to the car. The car was nowhere near, and it hasn't been anywhere near where it should be compared to the previous years of dominance. But I just think maybe because Lewis Hamilton's contract at Ferrari, that's how many years? 1 year, 2 years?
I have a feeling 2028 is ringing the bell. I think it's
really 3
yeah,
3 years.
It's either 20. I think the other thing with it is it's one of those contracts where there's a option to extend kind of thing as well with it. I have in my head, I think it's 2027 or 2028. I might be wrong on that. I'm sure people will let us know in the comments.
I can't envisage Lewis Hamilton driving for another 3 years, mate. I just can't see it.
I'd agree. I listen. I think we said on the first video I think we ever did was I still believe Abu Dhabi 2021 had Michael Massey made the right call on that and Lewis Hamilton, won that day the 8th title. I'm not saying over the season he deserved it over Max. I'm just saying had he won it on that day, he would have retired. I think that last season.
Do you think?
Yeah. I do. It's part of what made me kind of think. After Abu Dhabi, let's say Abu Dhabi then.
Yeah.
And after that, what I did think, is sort of the not so much coping mechanism. It was more that actually, had that gone the right way, Lewis probably would have retired, and then it would have been a case of, that'd been it. He'd lost. At the minute, Formula One is in a glorious position in terms of drivers. You've got fantastic drivers coming through, Piastri, etc., Norris, Russell. You've got drivers that are right at the top of the game at this moment in time in terms of Max, Charles, whichever kind of category you put Charles in. And then you've got legends of the sport in Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. That's like you want that dynamic. F1's at its best when it has that dynamic of drivers. And I do just think that Lewis Hamilton, 2021, 100%. New regulations coming in 2022. He probably had an idea that Mercedes weren't going to be the same. I really do think he would have retired. I genuinely do believe that. I think
so now he's just chasing it. He's chasing it now, chasing that 8.
Yeah, I think so. What I'd say is, I know what you're saying about the motivation. I think there's no question about it. You can see it in Lewis's body language, in 2022, 2023. And this year, probably more so than ever. But I think probably more so this season because we know what to look out for. We know Lewis is leaving Mercedes. We know that whenever a driver leaves one team to go to another, you're always watching to see certain things saying, the team trying to sabotage him. Is he not putting the full effort in? Is he passing on information here and there? All these things start. But certainly with Lewis Hamilton, the attention is magnified 8 times because it's Lewis Hamilton. It's one of them, isn't it? this debate's going to ramble on all season, not just us, I think across the Formula One paddock, until we see Lewis in the Ferrari. We see how Lewis is in a machine that can win races or can be finishing on podiums and pole positions. For me, I think if Lewis has got equipment underneath him that can win an 8th title, I think you see a different Lewis Hamilton. I think we see it with Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso in the McLaren compared to Fernando Alonso at Aston Martin at the start of last season. You saw, he didn't just suddenly become a great driver again.
Yeah.
He always had that quality. I still think Lewis Hamilton's the same. I actually think it'd be quite a similar scenario to Fernando Alonso starting at Aston Martin, albeit in a better car as well. Yeah. I just don't see a world where Lewis Hamilton won't be right at the front competing. If Ferrari, listen, 2025, things will be totally different again. It could be a case of Red Bull have took another step forward because we know the new concept is coming in Japan. Ferrari might be back to the drawing board by 2025. Yeah. So there's a lot, and then if they are, then all of a sudden Lewis Hamilton's thinking, I might only do a year here or something. It's so hard to say. It's all sort of hyperbole at this moment in time. But let's move it on a little bit, mate. Let's move it on a little bit because I'm conscious that we're always spoken about is Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz.
We've not spoken about the race.
Yeah, we're not going to speak about the race. Let's talk about the first thing and foremost, the race itself. Yeah. What a result for Ferrari. Locks, I'm going to ask you a question. If Max hadn't have got the DNF, where's he finishing in that race for you?
I saw this, mate. I don't know if you saw Checo said after the race. I haven't seen the clip.
I do agree with Checo, but he's over egging the pudding a little bit there for me.
Yeah. I think Max would have won the race, mate. I think he would have.
Nah, come on.
No, he would have. I think he would have won it, mate. I really do. You really don't. Him. Because of the issue, he was already he was struggling from that lap onwards. I think. I honestly don't think. I think if there were no problems with Max's car, I don't think Sainz would have passed him there on that lap, mate. And I think he would have gone on and won the race. I'm sorry,
with that pace difference. Nah, I genuinely don't. I think maybe on another circumstances, if it hadn't been that big a difference, but it was such a big difference, throughout. Apart from qualifying, ironically. I don't know. I don't see a world how Sainz and Leclerc don't get past Max over a 58-lap race with the speed advantage. Listen, this was clearly a track that suited not Mercedes. Certainly didn't suit Mercedes. Certainly suited Ferrari and McLaren much more than it did Red Bull. I think you won't see this, maybe not even again this season, in terms of where Red Bull are arguably behind Ferrari and McLaren. I just don't see. Yes, Max started on pole, but I don't know. I just don't see how he'd be able to keep back two faster cars.
It's one of them unanswered questions, mate, that will never be answered. But
because you could have even played the strategy game in terms of one of them goes and extends and then holds up Max. In terms of a bit like Abu Dhabi 2021, ironically, what they did with Checo to get Max in Lewis's pit window. I think Ferrari could have tried something like that. I think there's too many things. If it had just been Carlos behind, maybe Max pulls off some of the most outrageous defensive driving, like Brazil 2021 style, to just keep the faster car behind by any means possible. But I don't know. I just think it'd have been difficult. 4 different DRS zones as well. I think it'd have been a big call. And that's not just from Ferrari bias. It's not just from Ferrari bias.
Well, we'll agree to disagree on that question, mate. Because I do think Max
let us know where Max would have finished had there been no issue. It's
because he was driving with basically 3 wheels, mate. To be fair, even on that lap where Sainz overtook him, that's where he started to struggle. Obviously, he didn't notice the issue on the formation lap or anything, but. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, we'll agree to disagree.
We'll agree to disagree. I think he got third. I think Checo was waffling, to be honest. Third. I think Checo was waffling. There's no way Max and the Red Bull would have finished behind the McLarens, which is what Checo was kind of insinuating in terms of trying to justify his own performance. I mean, I do think Checo was waffling. I'm not going to lie to you. I think he was trying to save his own look, really. But for me, there's no way Max would have finished lower than third. There's no way. Arguably higher. I can see your argument, definitely, mate. But I do think the Ferraris had the pace this weekend. But listen, when Max has an issue or the car's terrible or both, we see how Max responds when he's angry. Japan is going to win by 40 seconds. I've made peace with that fact. He's already superb in Japan. He'll win that race by 40 seconds. You got to make peace with that already, guys. If you're not a Max fan, in the comments, let's move on to incidents in the race.
Incidents, yeah.
Alonso and George Russell. Now, when I saw this first time, I thought, Fernando Alonso, you can't be doing that, mate. You can't be trying to park your car there, mate. But having looked at the context behind it, consider Brazil 2023 when Fernando took different kind of racing lines, did try some maneuvers like that, maybe not to that extent. Because look, people are trying to insinuate Alonso tried to put George Russell into the wall. That wasn't what he was trying to do. He wasn't trying to put him in the wall. Believe you me, if Fernando Alonso wants to put someone in the wall, he does it himself. If you annoy Fernando Alonso and he's got nothing to fight for, he'll do it himself. A bit like Max. Yeah. It's one of those things, but I just don't see. Yeah, Russell, Alonso. Yeah, I can see why he got a penalty, but 20 seconds for me seems incredibly harsh. I think it's more based on what happened rather than what the actual offence was, if you know what I mean. I think if Russell had just gone slightly offline and been able to continue, I don't see how in any world it gets a 20-second penalty. The fact George loses control of his car is what George said himself. He said it's a me problem as well. He lost the car.
Yeah.
Why is Alonso getting 20 seconds for that? For me, when the bigger cause of the problem was George losing control of his car. People will disagree in the comments, I'm sure, but I don't see how Alonso gets 20 seconds for that.
Mate, if we know what Formula One drivers are like, right? If George didn't even mention Fernando when he crashed, there's a clip that Sky put up of the first minute after the crash. Not a single mention of Fernando and what Fernando did. I do think Fernando was being a bit naughty. I don't think he intentionally, he didn't want Russell to go in the wall. I think he was just being a little bit naughty. He messed it up a bit,
didn't he? He made bones. Yeah. I think what he was trying to do, I mean, he didn't actually, there's this talk about he brake checks, George.
No.
They actually said when he looked at the actual data, he hardly even touched the brake kind of thing. He just messed up. He was trying to just come off the gas and just take the corner in a different way and just focus on the exit more than anything, because he was going into a DRS, so it's the fastest part of the track he was going into. And you don't want George right on your gearbox at that point. And it was naughty, but that's
10 seconds, mate. I reckon
he didn't slam the brakes on like what Sky were trying to suggest and Mercedes were.
10 seconds, I think, mate, is a fair penalty for that. But yeah, like I said, we know what Formula One. If George Russell at the time had any, thought himself that Fernando's caused this, he would be straight on that radio and he would be saying, Fernando and effing this and effing that. There were none of that, and I just don't think. I think the 20-second penalty was far too harsh. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. If George doesn't crash or nothing happens, there's no penalty at all. No. Even if George moans on the radio about it, continuing the lap, there is no penalty there. 5 seconds at most. I don't even see how they can give a penalty, if George doesn't crash. So that for me is what kind of tells me that at most it should have been, 5-10 seconds, if not anything at all. But I don't know. Let us know what you think in the comments on that one, guys. At first when I saw it, with the Sky kind of like commentary on top of it, you kind of build your own narrative. And then when you actually take that out of it and just watch it, having listened to both perspectives of Alonso and Russell, you look at it in a different way in terms of something like that, I feel. But
there's a bit of history between Russell and Alonso with post-race penalties, if you remember.
Yeah.
And you can go and hear all about it on our previous video about the FIA and that. So have a scroll down and have a check there. But yeah, another crazy call, mate, by the stewards. That's for sure.
Be interesting what it does for Alonso at Mercedes in terms of if that happens. In terms of I don't think we know what Toto Wolff's like though in terms of having a memory like an elephant with things like that in terms of not being able to let things go. I think George and Alonso are very, very close off track as well. They often travel to races together.
Yeah,
I think I've seen TikToks of them playing ping pong together on the plane to races and things like that. Yeah, they're quite similar personalities as well, really. So I don't see any issue with that personally, but maybe Toto Wolff might just be like, ooh, I don't know. That might be just me trying to create a dramatic discussion, but Locks is having none of it.
I'd let Fernando Alonso break check me, mate. What a guy he is. I love him.
Legendary man. Legendary man.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, are Red Bull, in terms of the constructors, now totally reliant on Max for you, Locks?
Oh, I think so, mate. I mean, like I said earlier, he's a liability checker. Do you remember last year when I said
a title race for you still? Is it just Red Bull going to cruise it anyway, or do you genuinely think now Checo could actually cost him that title?
No, I think Max will win it by himself, mate. I think Max will win the. You know, obviously Checo will contribute points, but I think having Max there and then an average second driver will be enough to. You know, I get what you said about the title race with Ferrari. I think Ferrari are definitely more than capable of winning the constructors. I think just with, you know, if Carlos and Charles can, you know, just consistently get, you know, podiums between them, you know, two, you know, we won't see many more 1-2s, but 2-3s, even 2-4s, 3-4s. You know, I think they've got a good shout, but I just think Verstappen, the amount of points Verstappen will accumulate, mate, I think will just be crazy, and Checo will get his fair share of podiums and third, fourth, fifth places. So I think they'll have enough, mate. Red Bull, I do. Not solely reliant on Max, but you know, mainly reliant on Max for sure.
That's it. I mean, Max won it himself last season, but what I would say is that they didn't have a clear second team all season at all, really. You'd argue all season, really. It was only really McLaren in sort of like the latter bits of the season, and then Ferrari in the last sort of like 3 or 4 races really established themselves as the second best teams, really, at that point. It just feels to me, I do think Red Bull will still win the constructors, by the way. But I do think that will be where the title challenge is this season, you know, rather than the Drivers' Championship. Because if Max okay, take a typical weekend, Max wins 25 points. Just say, for argument's sake, Charles and Carlos get second and third. Checo's still got to finish 5th to keep the the points ahead, kind of thing, or minimum 6th. And you know, you never know. You never know. And that's relying on Max to win, you know, every single week, kind of thing. So you just like take little things like that, and then obviously you throw like your mad Australia races in there, or your Singapore's from last year.
Singapore. Yeah.
I do listen. As long as it's a title fight, there's some kind of jeopardy there. I'd be quite happy, you know, in terms of it doesn't automatically make this season better if we've got a bit of jeopardy there.
Yeah,
but
I think Ferrari should focus on you know, a late second place push from McLaren's second half of the season, mate.
Yeah, no, you've got to factor that in as well. Listen, Ferrari have got to maintain what they're doing right now, because you know, McLaren closed the gap on Red Bull and Ferrari pretty drastically this weekend, and maybe not so much close.
And I think they'll do it again. You know, as the season goes on, they will continue to improve.
Well, let's talk a bit about McLaren, mate, because we know this is a Ferrari and McLaren-based podcast, and obviously I've tried to dominate this one because Ferrari's performance, but McLaren, mate, great weekend.
I remember us saying after the first Grand Prix, mate, after Bahrain, we said, you know, you look at where McLaren are this year compared to the start of last season, it's crazy. And even Zach said at the start of the season, it will be the second half of the season where we will be at our best. And that's promising because of where they're at now. If they're going to improve even more, you know, I don't want to make any bold claims here, mate, but like they could be consistently finishing above Ferraris, mate. They could consistently be in, you know, above Ferrari, below Red Bull in the second half of the season. Personally, I feel obviously it depends what Ferrari are going to do. You might have more of an inkling on me. I haven't read too much about what Ferrari are expecting as the season goes on, but I think McLaren, just like last year, they're expecting only to get better, and I think that's really that's really promising and quite exciting as well, mate.
Absolutely. I mean, McLaren could easily have a say in that particular race in terms of the constructors, in terms of if the certain weekends. Yeah, I think places like, say, Qatar last season, McLaren was strong. McLaren were arguably stronger than Red Bull that particular weekend, or at least equal to Red Bull that weekend.
So remember Silverstone as well.
Silverstone, yeah. Silverstone was super impressive. Japan last year was the first double podium. Japan's the next race. We know how good Red Bull are there, but McLaren, in terms of fast corners, we know how much that suits the McLaren car. Be interesting to see how they get on there. So easily, McLaren can have a big say in that particular fight, and they're still definitely in the fight for, seconds, for the constructors, and there's no question about that at all. Because it feels like at the minute, Red Bull big gap, Ferrari quite a big gap, McLaren huge gap to say McLaren to Mercedes and Aston Martin. It does feel like you're seeing that pecking order develop at the top end of the field straight away. Really, I think it would be a shock, really, for most races now, if the Mercedes or Aston Martins are getting into the top 5 at this moment in time. It just feels like the gap is so big. And anything in the top 5 will be decent off those teams at this moment in time.
Yeah, and it's an exciting lineup as well, obviously, mate. Lando and Oscar, young lineup. I think what you said about Charles and Sainz not fighting and being respectful with each other. Same McLaren, obviously. Piastri let Lando through at his home race as well.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these are sportsmen. I'm sure he wasn't happy. Deep down, he wouldn't have been happy with that, Oscar, but he did it at his home race, and I think fair play, mate. It's what's best for the team, and a really good lineup, mate. Oscar and Lando. I mean, Lando has been the next up and coming big thing for a few years now, in Formula One, and Oscar is that guy now, I think. So yeah, I'm really excited, mate, to see how the season goes, to be fair. But
yeah, absolutely.
I think we've got a chance at second, I think, come the end of the season.
Andrea Stella is a clever man, and that's my hot take. That is my hot take of this whole race. But there's no question about it. And McLaren, like Ferrari, I think have also got a better driver dynamic and driver pairing overall.
Yes.
In terms of, neither are better than Max, and neither Carlos and Charles are better than Max, but they're both a lot better than Checo, if we're being honest. And that dynamic alone does make the constructors maybe a little bit more interesting, in terms of being able to take points in that lot away. I don't think there's any question about that, really. And that, for me, McLaren have got a stronger pairing than Red Bull. I don't think there's any question at all. And you can make a case, in terms of McLaren and Ferrari, both getting quite close to Mercedes in terms of driver pairings. Now I think it's getting a lot closer than what people. I think I've said for ages, Mercedes by a mile, strongest driver pairing. But you look at the consistency of the McLaren and Ferrari drivers at this moment in time, how much they're maximising in every single race so far this season out the car, both of them. Yeah, I think it's a lot closer than what people think, and that does make that particular battle a lot more interesting. See anything else we want to discuss on this one? We can't finish without talking about Haas, mate.
Okay, Haas. There is another thing. Let's end on Haas. I've got one more thing to talk about, mate. Williams. I mean,
of course.
Yes, Sargent, obviously. Basically demoted. Obviously Albon has that crash in FP. I can't remember now, mate.
The first one. I think it was
FP1?
The first. It was certainly on the first day. It was either FP1 or FP2, but it was early on.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear your take on it, mate. Because for me, I think I'm on James Vowell's side here, mate. I think Albon is your best driver. He is your best driver for sure, in my opinion. A back marker like Williams, you need to be able to basically do what you can to get points. Scrape as many points as you can. And I think the best chance of doing that, obviously it didn't pay off, but the best chance of doing that is with Albon, your best driver. But obviously, Albon had the crash. If anybody doesn't know, if anybody's under a rock, Albon crashed his car in FP1. They didn't have enough spares or something like that, so they basically
have a spare chassis. They didn't have it. I can't get my head around a Formula One team not having a spare chassis in today's Formula One kind of thing. In the days like Minardi and things like that, fair enough. And it was crazy. Or Marussia, teams like that in terms of really minimal funding. But for Williams, an historic team, yes, we know they're struggling financially now in the new era of Formula One, but jeez, that is not good. That is not a good look, really. And what I would say is, I actually agree. I do. I think it was harsh on Logan, but you can't just look at with Formula One. The fan perception is always based on your last race kind of thing. I mean, we've got people claiming that Carlos can take the fight to Max if he goes in the Red Bull next season. We've got these kind of hot takes coming in at this moment in time. Keep it calm. Yes, Alex made the mistake, but Logan over 20, 25 races now has finished behind Alex every single time. Not one or two really good performances from Logan to get ahead of Alex every single time, and most of the time by 3 or 4 tenths, a lap. There's a big gap there. What I will say is, if this was a Haas situation, because it feels very Haas-like under Gunter, that what kind of happened, and say it was Nico Hulkenberg crashed, they wouldn't have passed the car. Sorry, if it was Kevin Magnussen who crashed, or Nico Hulkenberg, whichever way around it was, they wouldn't pass the car to the other driver because there isn't as big a gap in quality. I just think the gap in quality justified the decision, really. If it was, say...
Would Red Bull do it?
Yeah.
If Max crashed?
Red Bull would never get in that situation, as much as it'd be quite funny if they did. I think someone like Christian Horner or Helmut Marko are not giving the car to Max Verstappen. And that's exactly what you got to think about things like that. It's a ruthless sport, but Logan hasn't done enough to really complain too much. And if he does complain, he's just giving Williams another reason to get rid, really. But it does make me question, why did Williams keep Logan if they had that little trust in him? I think that's definitely a fair question. And I think it is a question to be had, really. In terms of if you don't trust him enough to take the car when he hasn't even crashed it. Yeah, but the whole scenario is just crazy because it's not like it was FP3 or just before quali this happened, or it happened in quali. For it to happen in FP1, I can't think of a time this has ever happened. I honestly can't think off the top of my head. The only time I can think of is Mick Schumacher, but I was in quali when he crashed and just totaled the car that much. And Lance Stroll last season at Singapore, he totaled the car that badly. But to it to happen 2 days before the race, 2 and a bit days before the race, is absolutely crazy. In terms of that, that Williams had to resort to that, and it was a big crash, but it didn't seem that heavy a crash to cause that much damage, kind of thing. It wasn't like he, wasn't able to get out of the car and anything like that. Alex was obviously fine enough to drive it, and it wasn't that big a crash for it to have that big an impact. So crazy stuff, really. And it'd be interesting if that does happen to any of the other, lesser teams at this moment in time, if they would have a similar predicament, really. But you'd like to think not, because that's not a good look for the sport either, that a team that isn't even the worst team on the grid can't put 2 cars on the grid with a little bit of inconvenience. But
let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments
if you think it was the right decision. Logan. It's Ted Kravitz's line of questioning was interesting as well. It was like he was Logan Sargent's dad or something. I don't know if you've seen that interview. It was quite an interesting line of questioning there from.
It's just Ted, isn't it? That's Ted.
You're not a Ted fan, to be fair. I am, but
I think he's a right knob, mate. But
dearie me. That's us not getting invited on Sky anytime soon. Okay. I might on another video. I'll throw my thoughts on a Sky presenter.
We'll do a video. Mate,
I mean, Paul di Resta's not on the channel anymore, so a lot of my slander's gone, kind of thing. But when Nico Rosberg makes appearances and that lot, I can come back with my slander in that lot. But yeah, Locks has got quite a bit of slander of certain of certain individuals. Haas, we need to talk about Haas. Double points, okay. There was a lot of slice of fortune about it, obviously, in terms of Max, Lewis's DNFs. But again, Haas, they seem like a serious team again, mate. And Gunter makes an appearance again on the race out of nowhere. Yeah. I mean, just when I didn't think it could get any better, it's a Ferrari 1-2, and then Gunter's there doing the interviews and that lot. I'm surprised Gunter didn't get himself on the top step and that lot and start spraying the champagne himself, kind of thing. But Haas, I tell you what, they're looking like the 6th best team, but in the sense that they're putting a gap on the others in that sort of gaggle of bottom 5 teams or so.
Yeah, it's a shame because it kind of I think it kind of shines Gunter in a bit of bad light. I think a little bit because it's like Gunter's gone.
I'll just say, as a massive Gunter fan, could Gunter argue this is the car he built?
Well, I'm
not going to agree, but could he argue that a bit like, say, Fred Vasseur this season with Ferrari kind of thing? It's his car. Because it was made so late in the season. I mean, Ayao Komatsu clearly knows more about F1 than Gunter Steiner. That's not a hot take, but it's certainly interesting, isn't it, mate?
Double points. They've definitely come a long way, mate. Haas have. They've definitely come a long way over the winter break. I think, obviously, K-Mag, lets his teammate through. And to be fair, even he had decent pace, K-Mag. I think he kept Albon behind, didn't he? He kept Albon in his rearview mirror. But I just think, Yeah, Hulk's having a great time, mate, at the minute, I think. Nico Hulkenberg, great
we're
start
talking
to the
about Max
season.
Carlos.
Yeah,
Hulk's next in the for best driver so far this season.
for sure.
He's been immaculate so far this season in terms of
Yeah. I agree, mate. And it's obviously qualifying performances have been amazing, and obviously he's been rewarded with like a very quick car. To be fair to him, so yeah, I think they've come a long way, mate. Haas, it's promising for them. I think they'll, I would imagine they are probably gonna get they'll get 6th place this season. I think, mate.
I think so. I do think so at this moment in time. I think not AlphaTauri, that's AlphaTauri. Then Racing Bulls have got decent pace. A couple of weekends when they've looked competitive. But I just don't know. I just don't think that's going to dynamical work as well as K-Mag and Hulk. I think they're both really, really solid drivers. I actually think Hulk's big incentive this season is looking at the seats that are coming available above, kind of thing. I can see
Mercedes.
Well, I can see him in Aston Martin. I can see
for sure.
Martin alongside Alonso or alongside Stroll leading that kind of development. Audi, maybe might come in for Hulk. If they can't get Sainz, do they go for Hulk? There's a lot of seats that will come up for Hulkenberg. I'm no doubt about that.
He was reserve driver, right, for Aston Martin.
He was, yeah. He stepped in. So he was, I think that was 2020 and 2021 and 2022. I think he stepped in at times for Vettel. And he did well as well. He was super. I think he got a reputation as the super sub in 2020, where he came in, good points finishes. I actually think it wasn't Aston Martin at that point. It was Racing Points at that point, actually. But same idea, same team. But he did a job kind of thing, and he's proven himself at that top ends of the the topper end of cars. He can deliver consistently, and Haas have given him a decent race car when he's getting consistent points, kind of thing. But there'll be a lot of seats that come available to him, kind of thing. And we joke about Mercedes. Okay, we do joke about Mercedes, but there's a few things to add in here. If they're not too sure about Russell experience-wise, why not put in another experienced driver alongside him? And Mercedes, that car's not looking that appetizing at this moment in time, with how things are going. A few things to consider, it's not much different. Say Hulkenberg going into Mercedes, not too much different to Bottas going into Mercedes, all those years ago kind of thing. Or Perez going to Red Bull. I'm not saying he's that caliber of driver at this moment in time, but you could see it. If you want a clear 1-2 dynamic, Hulk is by far the best driver outside the top 4 or 5 teams for me. By far, I think he's far better than the other drivers in that sort of bottom 5 teams. I think we had this debate. I mean, let us know in the comments if you agree with that. But I do think he's quite a long way ahead of, in terms of all package, race pace, quali pace. I do think he's got a decent gap, and he's shown that in his career as well.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. Totally agree. Just to end on, mate, I do want to say one thing. Let's add something new to these videos. The race reaction video. I just want your favorite moment of the whole weekend. I'll tell you mine right away, mate. It is the Valtteri Bottas Uber advert. Have you seen it?
Yes. What an advert. He is the most non-Aussie in the history of non-Aussies, kind of thing. He's more of an Aussie than Danny Rick and Oscar Piastri, I'm afraid.
Yeah, mate. You know what? That is my favorite. That's my favorite thing I saw this weekend. I think seeing that advert with Bottas running like he was on Baywatch, mate. It was funny with the blonde locks as well, like flowing in the wind. Quality, mate. But yeah, over to your slightly, maybe more of a slightly more race based moment if you want, but it's up to you.
I can't decide, actually. I can't decide. I'll go Ferrari, the cars of Ferrari passing the finish line on lap 58 in first and second position. It's but no, in all seriousness, I think probably the radio actually from Sainz in terms of saying that I would never ever in my life think in these era regulations that Carlos Sainz would be able to say on his radio, I'll slow down a bit so Charles can be, or whatever it was. But let's be together over the finishing line, or whatever it was.
Yes,
it was a bromance there blossoming over the race radio there. But yeah, I think,
and then the smooth operator as well.
Yeah, smooth operator. I'll also say the memes about the appendix kind of thing as well, in terms of every single driver queuing up to get their appendix removed and things like that. Fred Vasseur, part of the master plan is remove organs to to get race pace kind of thing. I don't know if you've seen that one or not. It's
yeah, I saw that. There's also memes of him on the podium as well, and someone's basically done a thread on Twitter or X of the podium, but instead of the national anthem, and like a different song every time being played instead of the national anthem. So you've got like Celine Dion there, you've got Cher. His jokes, man. It's funny. But,
it's one that I did not think. Even that Spanish national anthem and the Italian national anthem, that might be. And Fred Vasseur's face as well. Fred Vasseur happy it's like Valtteri kind of thing, isn't it? He's just a joyful character that you can't, even if he's like your biggest competitor of the Red Bull fan, you can't not like Fred. He's so different to Horner and Toto Wolff, and that's my team principle right there. You know, none of this corporate rubbish. That is a proper team principle right there. But guys, we'll leave it there anyway. Ferrari 1-2. I think it'll be the only time all season I'll say that. So get in there. We'll leave it there. I'm happy. Locks might get a 1-2, but we'll see.
I think it's coming. I think it is.
There's a McLaren win brewing.
Is a Lando Norris? Is a Lando Norris win the most anticipated thing right now in Formula One? I think it is, mate. We've been waiting far too long. We've been waiting far too long for a Lando Norris win. So
I'm going to say a Sauber sub 3 second pit stop. I'm going to say is probably probably more anticipated.
Yeah,
I think a Lando win's more likely. I'm not going to lie to you, but anyway, guys, we'll leave it there. Check out the driver ratings. We will be breaking down the drivers in a bit more detail individually. And yeah, we'll leave it there anyway, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done already. We are pushing for 200 now. A really, really lovely start for the channel. And thanks so much for your support so far. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you later.
Cheers.